What's going on, guys? This is the Solea Show podcast. Today, I have a special guest. Nate's on with me today, and he is a fabulous producer and guitarist and mixing engineer. I mean, you're like the jack of all trades. You do a lot of different things. We connected a long time ago, actually, during COVID, I think it was. We connected during the pandemic, and we were talking on Illmind Stream and kind of created a friendship since then and have collaborated since then. So, welcome to the show. I appreciate you for taking the
Yeah,
time.
thanks for
So,
having me. Yeah, I feel like you kind of have to just be a jack of all trades or do a little bit of everything these days,
for
you know.
sure.
Um, but yeah, it's crazy to see, how fast time flies since connecting on the Blap chat and Blap gang.
I know, right? In 2020, it's been
hmm
what, that's like 4 years now at this point.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
crazy.
Yep.
So yeah, so
I know.
take us through like the basics of like maybe like introduce yourself a little bit more. Like tell us more about your musical background, kind of when you started playing guitar, when you started producing, etc.
Yeah. So I'm probably gonna be jumping around as the memories come back, but I started at least learning piano from my cousin, I think around the age of 6. Just to, unfortunately, I wasn't a really good student. I wouldn't practice that much at all, but it gave me an ear for music and gave me, the kind of ability to read some sheet music here and there. But I think the most important lesson out of that was giving me an ear and understanding, the basics of music theory. And then fast forward a bit, I think when I was around 13 or 14, I picked up the guitar. Um, and played around, went on, what was it? Looking at guitar tabs, just looking at any kind of music that resonated with me. Big into like alternative rock at the time, and I also being from Queens, New York. I feel like hip hop was such a huge scene. So if there's any way to learn music from from the hip hop scene and it just through guitar, like it was just a crazy time. I think that was around when YouTube started really coming about. A lot of people started putting out covers of like R&B hits. So that's when I started to really fiddle around with the guitar. And then a few years passed and my friend of mine who goes by the artist name of Veldalier now, but back then was Ryan Bandong, Ryan Mitchell Gray. He mentioned that he needed a bassist, and I always wanted to learn the bass. I love basses, like a rhythm instrument in itself. So I just took that opportunity, and from that point on, we kind of had this chemistry of creating music together. Ended up going on a mini tour with other acts such as AJ Raphael, Jesse Barrera, who produced our album, and um, Gabe Bundock, a lot of big artists, I would say, in the Filipino scene at the time, and
Sure.
some are still going. Jeff Burnett being one of them. Um, and then after a while, start to get older. Priorities start to shift as life always happens. And there was just kind of this moment where I was, playing around with music and producing music from around, let's say, 2019, 2000, let's say 2019, I got back into it a little bit. But before then, I was just kind of stalled. The band days were kind of a little over, and it was just my love for music kind of carrying me across. And then the pandemic hit. Um, and that's when I haven't really been doing anything musically, but I just decided to, log into work. And then also I noticed that Illmind was streaming on YouTube. Uh, Watch me make a beat, and I was like, okay, let's see how this goes. I just love watching the creative process,
Yeah.
and since then, I saw him create. He started saying, hey, send some beats, join the club, the Illmind Platinum Club, and I just saw it as a fun opportunity. No one was going anywhere. You're stuck at home. We are creating, melodies. Like, we're just creating music if you are, or just doing whatever. So I
Hmm.
thought it was a fun opportunity, and um, I submitted something. He played it on live stream, and at the time, I was, wilding out that he just picked my melody, and then all of a sudden, he started to collab on that, and then he went from YouTube streaming to Twitch streaming, within that same year, and that's when you and I met in this little, Twitch community. And it kind of started being more consistent from 2020, I would say. Just going into the dog, creating melodies, because it started to become this obsession of creating melodies, sending it, seeing if it resonates. I fell in love with the process of being able to collaborate with, a producer of that nature, of a Grammy Award winning producer such as Illmind. And, he was so great with the community. And then not only that, able to get to know other people in the community, just like yourself, sending ideas and seeing, what resonates there. So it's, I went through very fast, but that's kind of all of the little milestones that brought me to really starting producing, I would say, in 2020 and where we met at that point.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's really good. So take
Hmm.
us through the time of like when you were first recording guitar or like when you first like picked up the guitar. Like as someone
Hmm.
who plays now, like, you play proficiently. And if someone wanted to learn how to play guitar, like what would you suggest is the first way to do it? Would you say learn chords first? Would you say learn riffs, tabs, the notes on the strings, the fretting? Like what exactly? How would you go about it?
Yeah, I'm not an expert, and I'm not professionally trained, but I would say when I came across folks that did want to learn music, there's that famous Miles Davis quote, like, if you could sing it, if you could play it,
Hmm.
and if you can't sing it, you can't really play it. So I would take the baby steps there. Like, if you could try to hum a tune, see if you could kind of manifest that on an instrument. It could be guitar, it could be piano, whatever. But if you want to learn that instrument, if it's something as jingle bells, like hold on to that note and then try to manifest it through that instrument. And obviously make sure it's like something simple, not something from like Bach or something like that.
Sure.
That will help you, I would say, have more of an intimate relationship, and I would say be rooted more from joy instead of getting wrapped up into all the technical aspects of, what chord should I use, or what kind of tools or gear should I get. I think you want to learn about what music resonates with you and what music you want to play, and then from wanting to learn the melody, look up the tabs for, if you don't read sheet music, look up tabs for music that interests you, and then kind of take it from there and play the songs that you want to play and want to learn. And then, honestly, that's it. Just, keep learning. And then if you want to get really technical, there's so many other resources. There is an app called like Tenuto to practice ear training, learn more about music theory. There's Pickup Music now that you can invest in. There's just so many different avenues to learn. I'll plug one of my, favorite teachers, Bruce Beats. He's like just insane on the keys, and he teaches theory in a way that's like totally digestible. So there's just so many different educational tools now. It's insane.
Yeah, for sure. And you said you
Yeah.
started on
Mhm.
piano first originally, right?
Right, right.
So how did
And
that, I mean, how long did you play piano before you picked up a guitar?
so let's say six, and this wasn't consistent. And like I said, I
Sure.
wasn't really good at practicing at all, but I was going from six to what, 15, so about 9 years in, and
Oh,
I
wow.
wasn't necessarily going out and playing, um, piano for everyone, or going on these like playing any concerts or whatnot. I just had a keyboard laying around. Yeah, it would collect dust a bit, but it gave me that. Like I said, the most important part was that it gave me an ear for music to know,
Hmm.
what I wanted to play if I wanted to play a melody. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so would you say like just learning the piano helped you transition to guitar, just even from just an ear standpoint or a theory standpoint?
Yeah, yeah, I would definitely. It's a good question because when my cousin did teach me, he taught me chords, and I was able. Oh, so you could apply chords to the guitar, and these little steps that um, I guess tips that you remember along the way that you're able to apply to other instruments.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I started playing,
Mhm.
so I actually started playing on a like a bugle, like a trumpet when I was 4. Like I got it for Christmas and my
Yes.
mom was like, "Here, he's like a bugle or whatever." But she put me in
Mhm.
piano like soon after and it was kind of cool because like I eventually Like when I was like 12, I got into a jazz band. I was playing trombone because I was like, I want to play the trombone. I think it looks really cool. Like let's do it.
Mhm.
So I got into a jazz band, and it was cool to see like how the music training that I had from piano transitioned over to the trombone and even the
Yeah,
trumpet that I was playing. And I think it helps a lot. Like obviously it's not necessary, I don't think, really to like have music theory as your foundation, like if you want to make music, but I think like even just the ear, like listening to music young, I think is a huge deal. Like
right.
I my mom, I like she used to like when she when she was pregnant with me, she used to like listen to music all the time loudly, like Mozart and Bach and Beethoven, and I was exposed to it really young. And even just as a kid,
Mhm.
because my mom's a violinist, that's like what she does most of the time. She plays in an orchestra.
Well, that's awesome.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like always exposed to music, and she kind of put me in young, and it was a really good experience. And I resonate with you on that because I think people underestimate the ear, like the development of an ear, which can't really. I don't think you can just teach it. It's something that has to be like
Mhm.
developed over time, which is really cool.
Right.
So question
Yeah,
then.
I
Oh
would
yeah,
say
go
the
ahead.
same. Oh, sorry.
No, go
No, I
ahead.
was gonna say like, um, that's exactly it. Like I think there's a saying where you can't teach pockets. Like it's, you
Yeah.
know, you can't dictate what you listen to as a child or what you're interested in. Like, so I think developing your ear or just being honest with yourself with what you like is like the first step. Like, don't worry about how you're if you're gonna be a master at the instrument. Just find that joy and that root of why you want to play, and then the music that you're interested in will guide you. So
Yeah,
I
for
would just
sure.
that's the development of your ear.
So do you
Yeah.
ever experience like when you're producing, do you ever experience like beat block?
Oh, hell yeah, all the time. But
Yeah.
it's it's always like it's even to the point where it could make you procrastinate a bit because like you go in and it's like another day where you have to start over and then come up with ideas. But what has helped is helped me, and I think I picked up this tip from Bruce Beezer or somewhere, but uh when you have to kind of take your mind I would say out of the DAW and just think of it as whenever you're inspired, like a voice recorder is your DAW.
Mm,
That has helped me like immensely, like because instead of going in without any ideas, if there's a melody that hits you, and be sure to record, because if you're like me, you'll just definitely forget.
hmm.
You want to record that, and then it gives you like a little jump start when the next time you're into the DAW, whether it's like beat block or whatever you want to call it, to start with an idea. So, I'm sure you said that you were out biking earlier. You're a
Yeah,
musician. Melodies probably go through your head all the time, and I'm sure you're no stranger to recording on a voice recorder. But does that help? I don't know if you happen to do the same.
for sure. Yeah, no, I think getting out of the studio is huge. Like it helps
Hmm.
a ton. Like I go biking every day just because it's like I need to like clear my head. I like to think, like I liked my mind to be completely enveloped in something else other than music. And then I notice like when I come back to music, it's just so much clearer and the inspiration's flowing and there was a video I watched with Big Sean like I don't know a few years ago where he was talking about how he's like for the first few years of my career I was just in the studio every single day all day, and then he's like I realized like I had to go live life so that I had stuff to be inspired by. I think even John Mayer said something similar to this. So I think it's like super important if you're experiencing beat block. I think a lot of the time it's like get out of the studio for a little bit, come back,
Hmm.
and ideas will come. And then I also think too though, there's the flip side where people are like, if you have beat block, like always be out of the studio. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of the times like for me at least, like I like to sit down and just if I don't have an idea, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna be in here for like a set period of time, like 30 minutes. I'm going to come up with something. I don't have to keep it, but I'm just going to come up with something. And I might go through two, three ideas and I might trash all of them. But it's kind of training my mind to be able to like sit down and create an idea even when I don't really want to or when I don't have the inspiration. So there's both sides I think of
Yeah.
the coin. But I love what you said that about that about like getting out of your environment and then coming back into the
Right,
studio.
right. And finding like anything like that voice recorder or whatever will be your essentially your DAW. I mean, for me, someone's focused more on creating samples, like that's, the melody is usually the bread and butter of where I'm kind of getting the ideas from. I don't know if you could do the same for like a beats. Maybe you could like beatbox or something like that. If you have like a pattern in your head
Sure,
and
sure.
then
Yeah, you
recreate it
could
in
for
songs.
sure.
Yeah, yeah. But essentially, yeah, that's pretty much what helps me with beat block. And then interesting, I find what you said interesting, where even though you might not feel like creating, I think going in and with like that discipline of I'm going in, I'm coming out with something. I don't care if it
Yeah.
sucks. I don't care if it's something haven't felt. But I mean, for me, I feel a lot better leaving a session with trash than nothing at all,
Oh, for sure.
because that trash might not be trash to someone else, or I might say, oh, actually, this might work. Slaya might be able to come up with something, or I've sent ideas to Aimka,
Sure.
another producer, where I don't know what to do with it, but he just flips it in a way. I'm like, oh my God, like this is why people should collaborate, so
Yeah.
it's you want to go in there and get out with something. I think
Yeah,
that's the goal. Yeah.
I totally agree. I think it's super solid when you can go in and you can have like the discipline and the muscle to just put in the work. And I think over time it
Mhm.
becomes easier to create ideas when you're just like focused and you just go in and you just said, I'm gonna come out with even if it's trash, like I'm gonna do it, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's crazy. So I guess moving forward, after you started playing guitar and you got into production, like you obviously now you have Dat Honey, which is like your sample library collection. So take us through like the process of like sample creation. Like when you're creating samples, like how do you usually start with an idea? How do you layer the tracks? Like are there any like effects that you particularly like to use? Yeah, just take us through that kind of.
Yeah. I mean that it differs. I kind of hinted it earlier, but sometimes it could start with like a voice recording to help jumpstart the idea. Other times, if I don't have a voice recording, what I'll do is I'll listen to a whole bunch of music that inspires me, music that I like,
Mm,
before I jump into the session. So, you it's kind of like this like spiritual intake of all the sounds
yeah,
that all the vibrations, right? And then I'll go into the DAW and then try to tap into something that resonate me, whether if I listen to it, whether it was like the voice recording. And then sometimes I'll start with the guitar, sometimes I'll start with the bass. A lot of times I'll actually start with like keys or chords. Now, I guess from my position, since a lot of the stuff I create tends to be more boom bap related,
hmm
I would say it might be not necessarily, I won't call it easier, but um harmony isn't my strong suit.
hmm
So, harmony isn't necessarily big in boom bap either. So it was kind of like this natural kind of attraction to me when it comes to these dissonant, diminished like melodies. So I'll work off of that, playing like a Rhodes, and then certain plugins, I might throw in could be anything that would give that vintage sound, anything from maybe Mario Luciano's like presets, from the RC20
hmm
presets, Ill Minds, like anything to give that like old texture. 'Cause naturally, I just love those textures. Um, and then I'll play around, with adding that to either those three instruments. Those are the main three that I usually mess around with. Guitar, bass, and then keyboards. And then I guess the voice is an instrument too, so sometimes I'll add background vocals, harmonies if I hear something.
Sure. Yeah, no, I
Mhm.
love, I think my favorite thing about your music is your texture. Like you obviously have a very developed ear for texture, which I think is huge, especially when you're creating samples that are going to be used most likely for, an artist to come on and hop on and write to. And so like how did you develop an ear for texture versus just the notes? Do you know what I'm saying? Like what are some
Yeah,
practices if there's like producers out there that want to learn how to be develop texture like or develop their ear for texture? Like, how would they do it?
yeah, appreciate you. I think that there's so many ways to kind of I want to say cheap, but at least it would help create textures right away, RC20 being one of them. But I think people downplay how much live
Mm,
recording could add textures to your sound. When I'm playing an acoustic it's funny, I had I think an acoustic guitar, a classic nylon guitar, and then it has a DI, like a direct input. And when I play it, it's fine. It works all right. And then one day it broke, so I was like, oh, I guess I'll have to do it the old school way, where you just put the mic next to the guitar, and then it just brings life, just because there's
Yeah,
so much air that goes around it. Sometimes the laundry machine in my, where I'm recording would go off, but it adds this cool rhythmic texture.
sure.
So you could find texture in unexpected places, especially when you record live. So
Mm,
that in itself, aside from presets, will give you some kind of like uh, just, I guess, a different feel to it. Um, but the textures that I usually go for, without being a gearhead, is just more so old school, vintage.
you can be a
So adding
gearhead.
a
That's
lot of
okay.
yeah,
Yeah, gearheads
yeah,
are
like
good.
no, no, no. I mean, I'm literally saying, without, I'm not a gearhead. So, like, without being a
Oh,
gearhead,
oh,
with
okay,
from
okay,
what I
okay.
know,
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
yeah, from what I know, um, presets from like RC20, Cymatics has a bunch of like free plugins that
Hmm.
help. Even people, they joke around about drip, but even that gives its own textures that people love. So
Sure.
it's really about the type of music you create, and what you excel at, and what resonates with your ear.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I kind of
Mhm.
going back to that point you were talking about carrying your voice notes like around with you, always having that available. There was a paper that I read on Thomas Jefferson, who's like, one of the founding fathers, and he was saying that like what he used to do is he used to keep a notebook by his bed every single night. And so he would wake up with all of these ideas. And he woke up one night with like this idea, but he didn't write it down and he forgot it. And it ended up really frustrating him. So he's like, I'm never gonna do this again. So he kept like a piece of paper and probably a quill at that point, and wrote down whatever
Yeah.
came to his mind in the middle of the night, like when he would wake up with inspiration. And most of his ideas that we know of today came from that. And I think it kind of relates to like keeping your voice notes app open or just having it there. Like for me, it's on my front page. It's right there. If I flip the phone open, it's right there because the memory or the idea will fade if you don't just hurry and get it down. Like I feel like I'm racing against time to like get the idea down before I forget it, right? So I think that's huge what you were saying. I think a lot of people don't really take advantage of that. Like I know Charlie Puth, like his whole album was created based on him recording voice notes. Like and he called it the album is called Voice Notes, which is kind of a cool thing. So
Yeah,
going
that's
going going forward, like now you have your sample store, you're producing a lot, like it's past 2020 because we've collaborated a lot, like I see your name everywhere. I see it in the discords, with your samples. I see it all over the place. So my question is like if you had to approach like getting out there as a music producer today, like in 2024, building connections and like really creating it into a career, like what would be the steps that you would take?
oh man, that's a tough one, because I feel like your personality and like what you want in a career could be different than anyone else's, right? But I
Sure.
think one thing, at least if we're just talking business wise, like revenue streams, explore different revenue streams, that will definitely help. Aside from like placements, there's sync libraries, where you want to reach out and see if you want to you could contribute any sounds to a sync library. There's, if you're a sound engineer, going to those sessions, and
Hmm.
hopefully that will be like a revenue stream for you. Sample pack libraries, obviously, being able to own your own library, and also don't be afraid to contribute to a library like TrackLib too, to get your name out there. So there's that, and then you know, obviously the publishing from any placements. That, I think those are kind of some of like the basic different revenue streams you get, but creating connections, and something I haven't done, just because I haven't really found how the strategy works. But social is a huge thing. I mean, like, Gary Vee talks about it all the time. If you have a social platform, if you want to create a podcast, I think content, is king. And so like if
Yeah.
you're able to find a way to create content for your business, no, even if it's not music, and you're able to put it out there, that's going to give you a lot more, opportunities and a way to network and create relationships in the social space, especially with something like music.
Yeah.
So I think you want to focus on your content and be very mindful of what you put out, because you don't want to just put out anything, because that could easily lead to burnout, which is what I'm afraid of. Like, I don't want to get into a momentum and then I start. I understand that it's kind of a part of the new world now to get your name out there and create content, but I just wouldn't want to sacrifice, my mind to just get burnt out over creating content. So I would say be
Sure.
mindful, and if you have the time and you've figured out the formula format, that works for you, I would say focusing on content could definitely help bring you the business that you're looking for, aside from all the revenue streams that music could bring you.
Sure. Yeah. I think people don't want to hear what you're saying about like the content thing, and I'm
I know,
guilty of that
I know,
too.
I hate
You know, like
it.
I would much rather
Yeah,
just be
yeah.
in the studio making music all day, but it is super
Yep.
necessary now, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I know. It's because we all grew up and where like there's this mysteriousness of like all of the people we look up to, because they weren't making content, and that was just how the time was. But now it's just the free content that's out there kind of like levels the playing field, but also waters down like any kind of, you know I would say like opportunity in a sense, because people are just giving out free content. So if
Yeah.
you're not giving out free content, then some, it might just kind of it's just like a weird game right now when it comes to content. But you just want to, like I said, be mindful of the brand that you're trying to create, and put yourself out there.
Do you ever see that changing, like where we would go away, like a world where we go away from content, or do you think it's just here to stay at this point?
I think it's here to stay, man. I
Yeah.
honestly, because it's just like, if we're not even talking about music, where we're always looking at something, we're always on our phone looking, at what's next. We're always listening to something. So like we're digesting so much that like entertainment information that we've like never digested before, and
Yeah.
that's just what's getting people. And I feel like when it comes to media, that's what people get sponsored for. It's how much attention you could grab, how much attention you could
Yeah.
could give another business. So yeah, I think it's definitely here to stay.
Here to stay. Yeah.
But if there's nothing wrong if you don't want to do content. I think that's really important. But I think we also have to understand that we have to be comfortable making less money if that's the case.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, for sure. I was
Yeah.
just I just read Gary Vee's new book that he just put out, Day Trading and Attention. And
I was
in
listening
there,
to that too. Yeah.
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a line in there. I don't know exactly what chapter it was in, but he was like saying he's like if you want to be an artist, like a music artist, and you just put out songs, he's like those days are done where that's just all you have to do. He's like you have to make content
Mhm.
around the music, otherwise you're just no one's gonna ever find out who you are. And I was listening to, I don't know if you're familiar with Nick D, who's a music artist, independent music
Yeah.
artist. He was saying something
Hmm.
about like how a label called him up because he's got that cool podcast, independent podcast. And so I was listening to it, and he said like a label called me up and was like, "We want to sign you," blah blah blah. And he basically he declined the offer because he's like, all that they're going to tell me to do is go make more content, which I can already do by myself. So I think it's
Hmm.
interesting now that even labels are having their artists like make content, which is obviously it's part of the game. I got a cousin. He works at Warner Brothers. He's a movie mixer. So he works on the
Hmm.
movies. He mixes the TV shows, etc. And he was telling me he's like a lot of people's what they're watching now is a lot of user generated content. A lot of it is just more short form user generated content compared to what it used to be. As someone who's in the industry who's like constantly dealing with that kind of stuff, I thought that was interesting. I think it totally kind of supports your point with like you have to build entertaining content around your brand and about around who you are and around your whatever it is that you're trying to do, I guess. And that goes like I think that goes beyond music even now at this point. Like
Yep.
it doesn't matter what you do if you're doing it and you
Hmm.
want people to know about it, you got to create the content, the short form content,
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I think it can take away from the art, but I also think like it can create maybe inspire different things. Like I know there's a there's like something I'm gonna do right now where I'm gonna start making songs out of random objects, and it's been kind of fun. Like I've been like really experimenting with like Foley and sound design and maybe even ways that I wouldn't otherwise. So I think you just kind of have to find the right angle and find what works for you. But I think it is here to stay. I think you're right for sure.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And like it's like you said, it's if it's not music, it's whatever you want to aspire to be, right? Like if you add content to it, it's gonna give you a return like tenfold if you're able to figure out what's
Sure.
resonating with people. If you want to, I don't know, bake cookies for a living, if you're able to show instead of, keeping it to yourself, you're able to show how you bake and what you cook or whatnot. If it's out there, you're more likely to get eyes on it, and it will bring you more opportunities in that case. So it's definitely changed the game when it comes to like this entertainment or anything uh, you're trying to anything a creator is trying to aspire to be,
For
you know.
sure. So,
Yeah.
question about your guitars. So, what's your favorite guitar that you have?
I don't have a bunch of guitars. I actually only have like one electric guitar that
Sure.
I go to, and it's like a bootleg guitar. I got it off of
That's awesome.
Amazon because it was all I could afford. And it was like I think it was like it ran me about $200 at the time.
Okay.
And then I don't know if Mario Luciano was just being nice at the time when I took his lesson, but I was like, yeah, all I got is this bootleg guitars. He's like, you know, he was like, these musicians in the past, they would just go in with these unbranded guitars and it would just create, in the
Yeah,
studio sessions. So I was like, oh, okay, well now I don't feel too bad if you're focused on the brand, but
sure.
it just shows that in itself might give it texture if it's a unbranded guitar,
Yeah.
so it's called a Groat, so it's a electric guitar. It's a hollow body. I just
Okay.
wanted a hollow body, so that's what I got. And then for acoustic, I just have this old Taylor that I actually had since I was 16 or 17, and my dad got me. So
Wow.
um, yeah, so you know, I haven't changed or gotten anything really new since. Like the last new, I guess guitar bass related thing I got was a Hofner,
Okay.
and that was I think in 2021, and that was inspired by Al Hug because he had a Hofner, and I like the sound of it. But I'm a big fan of use what you have, because you really could make a lot with what you have. People underestimate what's out there. I mean, there's
Yeah.
some people that are just like playing guitar and keys, and it sounds like a real freaking guitar, and it sounds awesome. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think a lot of people are like, I need all this gear, but I don't think you really do to get started, you know? Like I
Yeah.
started off on just like the simplest guitar. Like I think I got it
Mhm.
when I was 8 years old at some pawn shop, but I recorded like all this music with it, and I was like, all right, sweet. Like it didn't sound as good, of course, as like a Martin or a Taylor, but what it
Right.
made me do is it did definitely add texture, but it made me learn how to mix a little bit better, I think, than I would have. Because if you get that
Yeah.
clear sound that you're getting on a Taylor or Martin, like yeah, it's gonna sound
Mhm.
great, kind of out of the box, or just like right from this jump. So I
Mhm.
think it's huge to like realize like experiment with your lack of what you have. Like you'll gain a lot, I think, in some sense, like artistically, by doing that. So I think that's huge. I love that. I think that's super cool.
Yeah,
And obviously
exactly.
your mixing is great. So
Oh,
you've
thanks.
yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed it. I think it fits well over vocals too. Like yeah,
Mhm.
like I was saying, your texture, your ability to understand texture is good. And I think that like whatever maybe would be missing, you can totally make up for it in the mixing. So I don't know, maybe talk a little bit about that. Like how does how has that limitation kind of like developed your mixing, if that makes sense?
Well, I guess it's um kind of a free for all, right? I
Yeah,
wasn't, I didn't go to school for mixing or anything, so there might be something that's unconventional that I'll do. It might be like 20 different plugins on one instrument or whatnot, but it gets the sound that I need. So it makes it a
yeah,
bit more of a playground, but at the same time, I don't want to downplay anybody, went to school for that. I might be doing completely wrong thing, but it's kind of going in, and I think what helped me learn mixing techniques is YouTube University, watching
Of
Illmind for an
course.
entire year, go and do some tiny mixes in his craft. I have a friend who's an engineer. His name's Andrew Kim. So sometimes if I have any questions, I'll reach out to him because he was actually what's his name, Alex's uh Alex Tomei, is it Alex Tomei? Yeah, Alex
Hmm.
Tomei is like right hand man as like a studio engineer. So, I'm blessed to have his friendship and ask him about questions about my mix. So it's
Sure.
really I know that the answer is kind of like a cop out and doesn't really give an answer, but that's just the experience. You listen to whatever you like and have those A/B references. Play something that resonates with you. Does if you're using me as an example, if I'm going into a boom bap playlist, I'll listen to the boom bap beat or whatnot, and then I'll listen to my instrumental. Does it sound gritty? Could it be a little dirtier?
Yeah,
Is it too muddy in the mix? So, really trusting your ears.
for sure. So you grew up in
Yeah.
Queens then, right? You said you grew up in New York,
Yep,
right?
yep, Jackson Heights. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So how has that
Mhm.
shaped your sound? Obviously, like if you grew up there, I'm sure. So I lived in New York. I lived in New York for a couple years. I was in Harlem, the Bronx, Yonkers area, New
Oh,
Paltz.
nice. Yeah, my
So I
cousin's from
moved
Yonkers.
around
Yeah,
quite
that's
a
where I
bit.
learned piano in Yonkers.
In
Yeah.
Yonkers, really? Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people don't know
Yeah.
that like Lady Gaga's from Yonkers originally, which is kind of crazy. But
Jadakiss is like huge
Jadakiss, yeah,
from
yeah.
Yonkers.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
people from Yonkers, I feel
Yeah.
like, that have come out
Mhm.
that have really done some cool
Mhm.
stuff in the industry. But so take
Yep,
us
yep.
through like growing up in New York just in general, like outside of music, and then like how that influenced your music. Because obviously that there's character there that you're not going to really find anywhere else in a certain
Yeah,
way.
well, I guess, yeah, from my experience, it was just interesting. Since it was New York, I think hip hop was a huge scene. I remember, I think in and I was six, first grade, I had my neighbor lived downstairs. Keep in mind, this is like a family from Chile, right?
Yeah.
So but it was just interesting because um, the kid who I was friends with had this huge collection of CDs, and when you had those huge pamphlets and it had I don't know if you
The good
remember, there
old
was like a
days,
bunch of
man.
I would go through those, and then he had Notorious B.I.G., and I would listen to Bone Thugs and Harmony, and I would listen to it while playing his like N64, and I'm like, this music's like just incredible without having like this producer mindset, but just growing up being a fan of that kind of music, and then obviously being from Queens, which kind of um uh I would say I could have definitely appreciated Jay-Z more, but my Colombian friends put me on Nas at the time. And then if you're from Queens at that time, it was just like, unfortunately, I grew up with a bunch of friends who would just be like completely one side, like, no, we only listen to
Yeah,
Nas,
yeah,
no, listen, no
yeah,
Jay-Z and stuff.
yeah.
So like, there's so much that I didn't really listen to Jay-Z because of that group mentality, but that was kind of like the music that I was growing up under. And then just being in Jackson Heights is just it's insane with the different cultures, that you come
Oh yeah.
across. There's on one side you're seeing a bunch of Colombians, and then you go down the block, it's kind of more of the Mexican area, and then you go down several blocks, I would say like around Elmhurst, there's a lot of like Asian food. So it was like this Queens in itself is like they call it the world's borough because that's,
Hmm.
I think it's the most diverse borough. So there was a lot of music you're even hearing, like um, secondhand music. Let's call it. They're playing salsa or vallenato, like all of these different cultures playing their music out loud. So I think it was a very open space, and an interesting space to be in because, like I said, despite having, you're having immigrants listening to the music that they've come in with, you have kids growing up with Biggie, and
Hmm.
Nas, and it was just awesome to kind of be a part of that, and especially uh, experience the food.
Oh yeah.
That was, yeah, when I was I, the friend who actually introduced me to Nas, his grandmother, they were Colombian, so his grandma cooked me like it was the first time I had like Colombian rice and Asian rice compared to like Colombian rice is just completely different. Like
Yeah.
um, the rice there with Colombian rice, I would say is like more seasoned. And not to downplay, Asian rice, but that was the first time I had that, and then I think I was just hooked. And then, fast forward now, I'm married to someone that's Colombian, so I think that kind of incepted me
Okay.
growing up in Jackson Heights.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of like the kind of cultural melting pot, that Jackson Heights could bring into you growing up there at the time.
Yeah, I'm sure your taste is very developed because of that, and probably just in a lot of things outside of music too. Like, I remember when I was there, walking the streets of Harlem, the Bronx, like, I cannot tell you how many reggaeton songs I heard, or like bachata, or, like, there's just cultures. There's Dominicans, there's Puerto Ricans, there's Cubans, there's, people from, you go down to Chinatown, you got like that whole scene down there in Lower Manhattan and
Mhm,
Little Italy, and you know what I mean? Like, there's just so much culture. It's really cool because it's like, I think when I was there, like it just felt like I could soak in so many different perspectives, and that really helped me, like even in just my music or even just understanding how to like relate to people in life, like because you're just around it all the time. And I didn't see that because I'm from California. I'm from like an area where there's not like a ton of diversity. I mean, I'm close
mhm,
to LA, so yeah, there is in LA, but it's different in New York. New York's a little bit, there's just more going on in New York City. So um,
mhm.
yeah, that's super cool, man, that you grew up there. Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
before
yeah.
we finish up, like, is there anything that you wanted to speak on specifically? Uh, it could be anything from mixing techniques to your favorite plugins to uh, kind of some cool projects that you
Uh,
have coming up.
um, I would say, I guess, just be on the lookout. I don't want to speak too soon. I'm never a fan of speaking about something before it happens, but
Sure.
just tap into the library or at Napes Music on my Instagram account
Okay.
just to see what I've been up to. I'm always collaborating with other producers, and more than happy to contribute to different libraries. So we just released a new pack with Jimmy Q. He
Hmm.
produced stories about my brother with for Drake, and he co-produced that with Conductor. So yeah, we just released a new pack, so check that out on the Instagram. Other than that, yeah, I'm grinding out ideas just like everybody, man. I'm
Yeah,
going
for
in there
sure.
and seeing what sticks, honestly.
Yeah. Well, man, thank you so
Hmm.
much for joining us today. I think this was very helpful,
Thanks for
and
having me.
it reminded me of like things that I need to do, and like you know what I mean. So it was good, man. So we will we'll talk soon. Thank you so much. And so people can find you at one more time. It's what is your Instagram handle?
Yeah, at Napes Music,
At Names Music. Okay.
Napes Music. Yep.
And then the music library is Dat Honey.
Yep, www.dathoney, honey.com.
Okay, perfect. And go check out his samples, guys. They're very nice. We've made some songs
Appreciate
like I said before, and I love the guitars and the textures, and you even do stuff that's not guitar related, and I think those are really super, super cool too. So yeah, man, thank you so much, and we'll talk
it.
soon.
Yeah.